There you go. So, hello everyone. My name is Angel Velasquez. I am with RGB Puede. Today we have Miss Lin from Fossum Middle School. She recently won the Teacher of the Year, right? Uh,
Yes,
so
thank you.
thank you for being here. Uh, so my first question I want to ask you is, can you tell us a little about yourself? What made you pursue a career in teaching? Yeah.
Okay. So good morning. I'm Mrs. Lynn. I am a teacher here at Fossum Middle School. I teach sixth grade, ELA, and SLA. I've been the dual language teacher since the program started here at Fossum Middle School, which was back in 2018-19. So I actually have the privilege of having taught the very first pilot group of dual language students that came into middle school here at McAllen ISD. So I do feel very honored and privileged to be able to say that. It wasn't easy task. Um, it might be important that I mentioned that that was also my first year teaching. And so I think when you're a first year teacher, now when I look back, I'm thinking, I would probably been like, oh no, that's too much for me. But when you're a new teacher, I think your mind is like you're open up to like all these possibilities, and you're new and you're so excited, and you're willing to try anything and everything, right? Because it's new to you. And so that was the challenge that was given to me halfway through the year. They told me that the teacher that of record for that year, her name was Mr. Vino, amazing teacher. I wish she was still here, but she's no longer with us. But I only had experience with ELA, seventh grade ELA that year. My first year going into doing dual language for the first time ever, having no experience at all, um, just my ELA background, and basically just taking it from there. Um, my passion for teaching or wanting to be a teacher, I would say that it was always in the back of my mind. I like to tell my students I originally wanted to do medical school, and then I just tell them a real quick of snippet of my. I'm like, but then I went to college and I took biology, and I was like, oh no, I don't like it. It's not for me. And I tell them, so you'll figure that out on your own when you go to college, and you'll be like, why do I have to take all these basics? Because you're gonna learn a lot
Yes.
about yourself that you didn't know when you were in high school. You're gonna come to realize that maybe things you thought you liked, maybe you don't like. So
Yes.
I've always had a strength in English. Always like I remember back when I was growing up, it wasn't star. We didn't call it star, right? We called it toss test. And I
Mhm.
remember always getting like the full score, like on on writing, and just always it was just like an easy. In all my classes, it just came easy. I didn't see it like as a passion then. I just saw it as like it's easy. But then when I went into college, I would say that that's when I really found my calling. Like I thought, wow, like I've always been pretty, good, fared out with, in English class and writing, and I like reading, avid reader, and that just, I just figured it out in college. Like, you know what, this is definitely what I could see myself doing for the rest of my life is, teaching other children, you know, um, the love of reading and the passion for writing. So late in life, but yes.
Oh, that's amazing. I think teachers are amazing. They do great things for kids. They help them develop their careers. I think that's amazing. Uh,
Thank you.
so my next question is, can you tell me a little bit about your teaching when it comes to dual language? Like, what is the process you do? Uh, what is the daily things you teach?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So, um, I do definitely see myself very different to all my other colleagues. I do all my ELA planning with my sixth grade and seventh grade, eighth grade RLA team. And I know my whole life we've called it ELA, and then now they changed the TEACs, and now they're changing everything to now it's RLA. So starting to retitle. So RLA, Reading Language Arts. So I do all my planning with them, but when it comes to SLA, I mean, I'd hate to say I'm 100% completely on my own because I'm not. But it's a little far-fetched, right? I'm on my own when it comes to planning and doing everything, setting up the classroom. And it's one of those things where you feel like, because there's not a lot of direction, and it might be because, the program is so new and there's not too many, well, we're the only middle school in our district, right, that's doing it.
Yes.
And we do have 7th and 8th grade teachers that are teaching the Spanish component of dual language, but I'm the only teacher that teaches them both the RLA and the SLA, which I definitely see the benefit, because I never teach, the same thing in both classes. They spiral somehow at the end of the year. Like, we're getting closer to STAR testing.
Yeah.
So it is starting to spiral in, where now we're doing like informational text in RLA, but we're also doing it in Spanish, but we're doing different stories, but we're using the same skills.
Mhm.
And the kids, they're able to see that, oh, we can apply all the same skills that we use in one language, but in another, even if the languages are completely different. So the way that I plan is by myself. I've been creating my own lesson plans. I do get hired to work on curriculum writing for myself. So I'm writing my own lesson plans in the summer. And when I work on the lesson plans, I'm pretty much thinking of how I went last year, how can I improve them for this year? And so I've been working on my lesson plans since my first year, which was 5 years ago. This is my 5th year. And they've gotten so much better, because I'll look back at my first lesson plans and I'm like, what was I thinking? Or I had these really high expectations, let's just say, like super high, because I didn't know what to expect with that being the first group coming in. And it might be important for you to know that I've never gotten any type of education in Spanish. Like, I grew up in a Spanish speaking home. My parents' first language is Spanish, and they were both educated, born in Mexico. I'm the first generation here. Spoke Spanish at home, English in school, everything was English, right? We didn't have these amazing opportunities when I was growing up, right? I would have loved to have been a part of a dual language program, right? Because then I would have excelled like in reading and writing in Spanish in 2 languages. So I don't have that foundation, which is one of my biggest challenges, right? So for example, around December, I always spend a couple of weeks going over acentos with
Yes.
kids, which they learned in elementary already, but they haven't really retouched. And this is the first year I actually had a student ask me, so since you mentioned that you didn't go to school in Mexico, how did you learn the acentos? Because they're so hard.
Yes.
Right? And I told them, I hadn't stopped to think about it, but that's a good question. And then I told them, okay, how do you, when you want to learn about something, what do you usually do? And they're like, we Google it, and we look for YouTube videos. I go, that's, and they were like, what? And I said, yes, I had to figure out ways, because there's not actually someone who could teach me those things.
Yes.
And of course, it's gotten so much better. But yes, like self-taught, asking a lot of questions to maybe teachers who did go to school in Mexico, and were able to give me like a lot of information, like, oh well, what they remember being taught going to school in Mexico, because it's so different to the way we're taught here. And so I create my lesson plan. I started creating my lesson plans like back 5 years ago, and all I've been doing is building upon them, and just changing the stories, changing the way, just trying a lot of new
To
things.
improvise.
Yes, a lot, and just hit or miss. And over the years, the lesson plans have gotten so much better. But I do plan alone, and this year is the first year that they gave us a block for language arts, which is awesome for me, because in the previous 4 years, I had to teach RLA and SLA. They were separately, but they were just single classes. And I still had to make sure that everything that they do in RLA for the TEKS, right, is taught, plus everything in SLA. So the challenge was for my students to still be able to do everything that all the other students are doing. And then, so they were doing double. And I do remind them that you guys are amazing. You do double everything.
Yes. Yes.
But my expectation doesn't change. It's still the same, just like my other students. So this year, my challenge is, yes, I have them in block classes, which means I have them longer periods of time, which means I can do more with them on one day. But unlike my RLA classes, I also have two groups of regular RLA. We have, for example, like all of our assignments for the week, and they're still expected to comply and do all the assignments, but I no longer have them for two different classes. What I do is I had to divide the days. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday is RLA day, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays are SLA day, which means they only have 4 hours, right? Tuesday and Thursday to do Spanish class. But they love Spanish class. It's like their favorite. They look forward to it all the time. Es día de español, and they all speak Spanish, and they're very motivated. And they're late, and they're just like, back to normal.
Yeah.
It's their highlight of the day. The
Spanish class, yes.
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 They still have to produce, like, do all the work, that all the other students are doing in 6 hours, 2, 4, 6, 10 hours, 5 days out of the week, and they're having to do it in 3 days. Sometimes it'll overlap into the following week, but they get it done.
That's
amazing.
It's
my expectation, but they get it done. They do. So
you talk about challenges, right? Being a dual language teacher is challenging. Besides being a teacher, dual language is another intense workload for you, right? So I want to ask, what are those challenges you face, right? Being a dual language teacher. Like I know you talk about developing your plans. That's challenging, but what else do you find challenging as being a dual language teacher?
Flip-flopping between the languages is, it might just seem like, oh, well, you're just changing the language, right? But you're changing gears. And that's me as an adult. So it also makes me think of them, right? If it's a challenge for me every day, not because of the language, but because I'm totally having to change, like my way of thinking and everything, that like the process is different, for everything that we do. And so if I'm switching, for example, like if yesterday we had ELA and then today I have RLA, like I have to switch my gears, right? But then they have to do that as well, right? Yeah. I mean, of course they're great, like they're young, and I'm always reminding them, you're young, don't tell me you're tired, you're so young, you should be full of energy, and you guys are sponges, and they're so resilient, and and they're able to, like change for them is like, it's not a problem, like they're able to just pick up right away. But for me as an adult, I just going back and forth, it's just every day. How can I put it? I mean, I'm so used to it already now that
it's like switching back and forth. It gets a little bit tiring, right? Going back from English to Spanish, from Spanish to English, it's tiring, right? I know what you mean. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, because sometimes
doing it like in the same day.
Yes, like, yes, yeah, I get you completely. I get you. So that's a big challenge, because when sometimes you speak English and you're talking to a Spanish student, I'm like, what am I talking about, right? So I get you. Yes, it's a big challenge, right?
Another challenge is when they come into me. Like I said, I have this this expectation for all of them, very high expectation, so I do tell them from the beginning, and they're a little intimidated, and they understand as we go through that I really meant what I said. Is I'll tell them, I'm not here to teach you how to speak Spanish. You should already be coming in, you already know Spanish, right? You've been, hearing it, speaking it, reading it, writing it, like all the 4 domains, the majority of them since they were in kinder. And I tell them, so I'm not a Spanish teacher per se, right? Not a language Spanish teacher. I'm here to teach you language arts, the content. And I'll tell them, so for example, if you were in Mexico, you would be learning maybe not in the same order that I'm teaching it, but you would be learning the same thing, right? Like it's language arts, like we do in English class, but in Spanish. And so my challenge is because I've never gone to school in Mexico, I don't have anyone to compare my lesson plans to and my notes to. And so I'm always questioning, like, is what I'm teaching, I mean, I know they're enjoying it. I know they can do it. I know it is challenging. I know where they struggle, right? Like I'm able to see all that, but how do I
But
know for
is
sure
is it really
that
working? That's the question you ask. Like, is it
exactly,
really working? No.
exactly.
And actually, we were discussing about this last time in our group that sometimes we teachers when it comes to dual languages, like they question a lot, like what is it? What I'm doing working really? And it is, and it takes time, it takes progress to see that they're actually doing something great. But sometimes teachers are like, like they question the things, the methods, and it's because there's not a lot of dual language teachers out there that can help, right? That's a big challenge, right? Even within your school, which is a bilingual dual language school, and which is the only middle school here in McAllen, right? That's another
Yes.
big challenge. So that's where my next question is: what do you hope for uh, to change here within McAllen when it comes to school, when it comes to dual language? Do you wish there were more schools that teach dual language?
Yes, I do. I do. And it's difficult for someone who doesn't completely understand dual language to comprehend like that it works. And so you do see a lot of, you do see and feel a lot of like kickback,
Mhm.
from people around you like that don't understand it because they see it more as like, why is it there? It's taking, it's messing up the schedule. It, they see more of the negative
It's
because
more work, right?
yes, they
Yes.
see all that instead of all the benefits.
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard, it's difficult. And I've even taken the time myself and the science dual language teacher, she's amazing. Her name is Miss Borrego, and she does an amazing job with, she's an amazing science teacher, and she's the only other teacher that I plan with, and we do like cross curriculum. Like
Hmm.
she actually brought me this story, and she says, do you think I can start it in my class, and then maybe you can get some activities out of it, right? And so we'll plan together. And since we have the same group of students, right, she has the same students I have, and so I that gives me a lot of hope, like having teachers like her. But again, she's in a totally different subject, so it helps me, right, because I have someone to encourage me and we're able to plan together. But at the end of the day, I still have to do, everything on my own. But then the outside world, I see it, right, like we're like in this little tiny bubble, just me and her and the other dual language teachers. And my department is very supportive, like they're my RLA team. And that's why I'm like, for me to get teacher of the year, like there's teachers that, my mentors that are so much more deserving of it. And I'm like, I mean, I feel bad to even get it because I'm just like, everything that I know and that I get is from them, right? Even
Hmm.
though I'm the dual language teacher, but everything transfers, into what I teach in Spanish class as well. And they're so supportive of it, and they know the struggles that I go through, because I verbalize it, and they know that I put a lot of my heart into it, and a lot of extra time and a lot of things that like they don't have to do, right, that I'm having to, like to translate, to make my own lesson plans, as opposed to like, as an RLA teacher, I can just go to the district website and get lesson plans that were created by like 40
Yes.
ELA teachers from the district, right? And I'm just one. So they know that. But outside of that, it's hard, to get other people to understand that this is that the benefits, that it's working, and that yes, it takes many years, for you to even see like the fruit. I mean, I would imagine, that the elementary teachers don't get to see their fruit, right? Like
Yes,
they
yeah,
teach the dual, and it's probably so hard. I think it's difficult to be a middle school dual language teacher, but I cannot even begin to imagine how difficult it is for an elementary teacher that teaches all 4 subjects, and on top of that
dual
has to
language.
do
Yeah,
2 languages. So
yeah,
I really give all my love and support to those teachers, and I don't question how or what they're doing in elementary before they get to me, to be honest with you, because I don't understand how I would be able to do that. Right? Like that's a big
it's a big four,
that's
like you said, four
4.
subjects and two
And then you have to
languages.
do it,
It's
and I don't know, maybe there needs to be some changes or some studies or something that needs to be happening where maybe they, should think about that load for elementary teachers, because that's that's big. Like
it
maybe
is.
they need 2 different teachers.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be real honest with you, because I'm not I look at the job postings a lot, and the elementary dual language teacher is always on there all the time, all year. And we should start asking ourselves why. Why does why do teachers not want to fill those spots? Believe me, they get started.
yeah,
I mean, there's been years that have been very trying for me, and my husband's asked me, if it's this much work, Evie, why do you keep doing it? You can just be a regular
yeah.
ELA teacher, and you can clock in and out like everybody else and come home and spend time with your family. But I just can't give it up. I'm too
Yeah.
far in.
Yeah, there
Like I've
the
invested way too much
yeah,
in my
like
kids.
you
I mean, it's not about me. In my students, like, to give it up.
you want them to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. I want the program to continue. I want people to understand, but I want to stop losing teachers. Like we've lost a lot of dual language teachers here as well. Like they only made it 1 year, and then I'm out of here. It's too much. This is crazy. Like I get it. Like I'm not even
Yeah.
questioning them. Like they are right, right?
Yeah,
But
I was
needs to change.
I was talking to a elementary dual language teacher last week, and
Hmm.
they were telling me it's a lot of work and they get paid less than an English teacher does, and they're doing more work. So that's for them, like it's not fair, right? So like you said, it's challenging, right, for teachers to teach a lot of work and yet not get paid. They get frustrated, they don't see the progress in their kids, so they kind of lose hope, right? And we were talking about this in the group that there's a study where when it comes to dual language, they should hire 2 teachers, right?
Hmm.
One in English, one in Spanish, and they can exchange students, right? One teacher teaches in English, the other teaches in Spanish, and that actually shows that actually kids are growing, their development, uh, the consciousness, their understanding of the concept. So I was like, how come we don't have this here in McAllen? Like, how come we don't have this in our schools where 2 teachers work together, they develop plans, they develop um, studies and everything to help their kids grow, and that could benefit kids a lot having 2 teachers, right? But
Yep.
at the same time, it's like it's very hard to convince our district,
Yep. To convince a crowd that really
Yes.
works. It takes like it would take years before they get to even realize.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you, how have you met parents who are opposed to this, like to do language, or um, what do you say to parents who like are kind of like questioning dual language for the kids?
So I haven't. I'll be honest. Like I don't really have parents question the dual language in essence, because since all the dual language, like the parents that I have for like the regular, that are my regular class students, since they're not a part of the dual language, they don't really ask about it. Like if they do ask, it's more like questions of, how do you, oh, I heard you're a dual language teacher, how do students become a part of the dual language, program? And then I kind of explained to them, that it started from when they were in kinder and from elementary and how the schools feed into us, right? I kind of give them a little, and that's all. But when it comes to the actual parents that, for the dual language students I already have, they don't question well, at least not anymore. Maybe in the beginning. No, actually, now I come to think of it, I get from all my classes, right? Because I have three blocks. The parents, I have like 95% support from all the parents. So to me, that's like already amazing. I know that it's because the kids have grown up together and they believe in the program, and so it already started, right? Like they've seen, even though it's taken a long time, right? Like how it's, worked. They've seen how their children have grown, right? Because they hear it at home or they see it through their work. I think the challenge is whenever I have students that don't want to be here and and it's very evident, right? And they're challenging, the language. And I'm not sure, like, it's probably encouraged at home, maybe or maybe not. I'm not sure, right?
Mhm.
But they come here and they hate it. I mean, literally, right? And they show it in their body language and their refusal to work, and that they don't want to be here, and so they'll refuse pretty much anything and everything. And it's this year I have none, so I'm like, oh, this is the first year. I'm like, I don't have any student like that with the language, right?
Mhm.
And that's different to me saying like a student that just doesn't want to come to school. No, there's students that enjoy coming to school and they're happy kids, but they just completely don't want to be a part of the dual language for whatever reason, right? And so usually the only problem that I see is when it's those students, then the parents will either ask me like, question like, what are you doing in class? You're not challenging my kid enough. That's why they don't like it. Right, I get it. Or two, they don't want to get them out of the program. Like like they know all it's not easy, right, to get them in or out, right? And then once you're out, you're out. So I'm trying to think of how to word it, because I guess at that point it's more of a this kid has been in the program for this many years, and their Spanish is like either that what they produce is like, and it's been going on for so long, and so the parents might think, my kid hasn't been learning anything, but they're in the same group, so you have proof like the kids have, right? So it's just that they choose not to. And I, like the saying goes, right, el que quiere puede, right? And so if you really want to, you'll learn, but if you really don't, you just completely block it out. And that's been one of the only challenges. But like I said, it's only like one or two students like every other year, because it didn't happen this year. And I did have one parent pull one student out this year, but I don't think it was related to the program. It might have been, for other reasons. Maybe the student wanted to be able to do other activities. And you see, that's where it also kind of intervenes with their schedules.
Yes.
And where the bigger picture, everyone, oh, it's not fair. Like, those poor kids, they're in these two classes, so they can't do extracurricular, they can't do this other stuff, right?
Mhm.
And the only way I can see it is they're being academically challenged, but we do have other activities in school that can be done after school. I know that takes more time, right? But I
It's
mean, how
beneficial.
do you
It's
explain that?
beneficial for them to being
Yes, but
challenged. Yes,
the bigger picture.
it's a big picture. Yes. Uh, I want to ask you one last question. Is uh, if you were to tell teachers who are not in dual language, what would you tell them? Like, you know.
So Not this year. It was last year. My partner, my science dual language partner, and I, we actually had, thought of that question. You know what? A lot of people question what we do. They think, I think they think that we just say it's difficult, but they don't really know, like, everything that goes into it. But vice versa, we have, they're not dual language teachers, but they're the bilingual teachers, right? So it would be basically like RLA teachers, some social studies, some other subjects, right? Math, that are considered their bilingual teachers because they're the ones, they're the subject that's teaching in English, right? So we're a 50-50 program. So they get 2 subjects in English, right, and 2 subjects in Spanish, 100%. So in 6th grade, they get science, which is 100% in Spanish, taught in Spanish, and then they get me with RLA, but they also get SLA, right? So then they're getting those 2. So then in their other 2 subjects, whatever teachers would be their history teacher and their math teacher would also be their bilingual teacher, right? So they're kind of fall under dual language per se, right? But they don't teach them anything in Spanish, right? They teach the class completely in English, but they follow the Gomez and Gomez components, right? Like we do. And so we actually had this presentation where we created these slides to show them how they could continue what we're doing, right? By using some of the same strategies that we use as dual language teachers, right? Like putting like students in pairs and groups, high, medium, low. We showed them those charts to encourage them, right? To show them like, look, this is what we use, and you don't have, even though we use it in the, just in the dual language setting, it doesn't mean you can't use it in the regular classroom and really benefit from it, because we see the benefit. Like if you walk into my room and hers is a science lab, but my room looks very different to all the other classrooms, and you would know just from walking in, not just because of the word walls and the boards, but the way I have my desk set up. Unless they're testing, my desks are never alone. They're always in pairs, groups of 4. They're always in twos or fours all the time. And because I believe in that system, right, of working in pairs, working in groups. So we did that in our presentation. We also showed them examples of like word walls, that how you don't have to do too much. Like you could just do like the English and Spanish words that are cognates, or word information that transfers, that can be mentioned in both languages, so that they have that constant that constant access to be able to access it in both languages. And again, at the same time, you're also reaching those L students, right? The English learners. So you're able to reach, both populations, right? Like basically everyone. So we made that presentation, and basically what I would want, everyone else to know is that I know it's hard for them to see and to understand the benefits of it, but ask the students, honestly. Like, I mean, they're honest, and they could give you, their answers, and you can ask them, what are the benefits of, you being in the dual language? And they could tell you like the pros and the cons, right? And they'll give you so many more pros, and that's your evidence right there, right? And I know that it messes up the school schedule. I know that, right? It makes it very demanding for everyone else. And I know that it's challenging that if you're just a regular English speaking, teacher teaching, your subject, to have to include all this additional stuff, right? Like, dictionaries, to make sure they have the English Spanish dictionaries, word walls, having them in groups. So the whole thing with the groups, I won't go too far into it, but there is a system, right? I don't just say like, you sit there. Believe me, years of that experience of knowing your students, and then knowing the whole system of the high, medium, low, right?
Mhm.
And then eventually you memorize because you know your students, right? You spend so much time with them, you memorize it. But I actually have like, actually, chart it down on paper and like, move the names around and okay, this is how it best works for this, do this type of activity and so on and so on. And yes, it does take time, but once you get used to using that system, it just becomes like this. Like you don't think about it anymore. You just use it, and I mean, it works. You can come into my classroom and you can see it for yourself, for anyone that would question it firsthand, just how, after using it over and over and over the practice, it works, it's efficient. Um, you're grouping students where, you're pushing all of them, even like even the lows to, you're challenging them the same as, all the way up to the highs, because your standard's always the highest and your expectation is for all of them to get up there. And maybe, and some of them will struggle, but the proof is there. So yes, there is some extra work that needs to be done, and it may seem like, oh, so I have to do this again every day all the time for it to work. Well, yes, you do, right? But it's a matter of like, once you get started and you see the benefits of it, like you won't want to stop, but you have to get started first.
You have to think big picture, right? Like you said, big picture, right?
Big
And
picture.
like you said, you make really good points. And I do hope in the future here in McAllen we have more teachers like you, more teachers like your science colleague, more teachers who are dual, more teachers that are uh, who want to expand this program even further because it does help a lot of students. It's beneficial for them, and this is going to help them in their careers along the way, right?
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
and I think all teachers want the best for their students, and I think this program is it's amazing, and we should have it more, right?
It
So
is.
I
I
think it's
agree.
important, and I think it's important to help find research, to find data that helps teachers help understand more, right? So I appreciate your time. Thank you for this interview. I really appreciate it, and I hope this interview helps students, teachers, and uh, parents, just understanding more of what the bilingual education is, and uh, we can see an increase in our schools. So thank you. Uh, Appreciate it, and I wish you a good day.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it a lot.